Hey everyone, it's Sherry with Squatchable, and the report we're going to talk about is about a woman who found a very interesting gift on her property. You'll never guess what it is. So the report we're talking about is number 29355 from the BFRO. The location of this report is Chehalis, Washington, which is in Lewis County. Lewis County is a very active area. They've had 46 sightings listed on the BFRO, and 16 of those are Class A sightings. The first encounter of this report occurred in the late morning hours of June 2nd. The type of environment that this encounter happened on was the witness's own property, and it was 15 acres of recently logged land. Now this report is a little bit interesting because the witness is someone that is actually very familiar to the researcher on this report, BFRO researcher Scott Taylor. And the witness's original report was very brief and very scarce, I think because she was intending to convey further information directly to Scott Taylor, and that he did. He provided lots and lots of information. In his follow-up report, Scott noted that the witness and her husband are longtime habituation witnesses. For people new to Bigfoot, this means they have a relationship, usually positive, with Bigfoot. According to Scott, Sasquatches are seen and heard frequently on the property. These Sasquatches seem to have a fondness and curiosity about this person. However, they do not like her dogs very much, and both of them have been injured in the past. The follow-up report goes on to discuss the unique gift that the witness and her friend found after noticing new piles of rocks in her pet cemetery. After walking about 50 feet further, they spotted some little bundles of grass about 2 inches long by 1 inch wide. There were 10 of them. 5 of them had been piled up in a little stack, and 5 were arranged in a straight line. She did not take pictures. Her dogs then became agitated, as they usually do when a squatch is near. She reached over to pet the head of one of her dogs, when suddenly a rock was thrown at the dog. Instead of hitting the dog, it hit her right thumb, causing a cut. Her friend by now was really freaked out and wanted to get back to the house. The witness picked up the rock and the green bundles of grass and took them back to the house. They treated the cut, and then they decided to see what was inside the bundles of grass. When they took one apart, they found a field mouse inside. They took a closer look at the others, and they all appear to have field mice in them, wrapped in grass like little mummies. Well, luckily for us, Scott did take photos of everything. The rock piles, the hand wound, the rock that was thrown, and the little grass mice mummies. In addition to those, they did a thorough search of the property and found tracks as well. A small one that was 8 inches long and 4 that were about 15 inches long, but they were only the outline. He also let the witness know that the mice mummies were likely a gift and suggested they leave a gift as well. They put 3 apples in a bag about 10 feet up in the tree. 2 weeks later, the witness called him with the results of their gifting. The next morning, when she went out to check on the apples, she found that the corner of the bag had been torn open and 2 apples were missing. On the ground, exactly where the mice had been placed, she found an apple that had been 80% eaten and then put down. The bag was still in the tree, and 1 apple could be seen. The witness saved the apple core for Scott, and when he arrived there, he checked for tracks, but the ground was hard. They found the other apple in the crotch of the tree that held the apple bag. They did find teeth impressions on the apple core that, according to Scott, were larger than human teeth, but smaller than a full-grown Sasquatch. There is a ridge down the center of each tooth, and there is a gap between each of the top front teeth. We suspect that an adult Sasquatch got an apple from the bag and gave it to a juvenile. Scott cut the core in half and then took a cast of both sides and photographed the apple core cast as well. So when you come down and look at these photos, you can see right here where the injury to the witness's thumb happened, and here is the rock that she said hit her hand. That looks like that was a pretty hefty rock, but for it to inflict that kind of injury, that had to have been propelled at a pretty good amount of speed. But remember, she was reaching down to pet her dog's head when this happened, and she's had her dogs injured before, So likely that rock wasn't intended for her, it was probably intended for the dogs. Now down here in the second photo, this is the picture of the mice wrapped in grass. And in the comments up here it says this is not something a person would likely do, yet it required a certain amount of skill and dexterity. Now in these, you can see that those are still bulky. These ones look like they're kind of flattened. I mean, these would be really interesting to find out there. Just looking at it, my initial thoughts if I were to see them on the ground without paying attention is I would think that maybe these were half masticated chunks of grass. But when you start looking at it, you can see that there hasn't been a whole bunch of grinding going on these, so they actually don't look masticated. And I can't quite see the mice that they're talking about, but it looks like these ones here are a little thicker pieces, so maybe these ones have been picked clean of the mice, and these ones, they've left the mice in those. And this is the rock pile that they found in the cemetery, and it says there were 3 piles like this which were not placed there by the witness. Rock stacks and rock piles are pretty common occurrences in areas that are considered habituation sites, and some people say that they're territory markers or possibly a road map. I'm sure some people have some other theories too about rock piles, but I haven't heard anything else beyond those 2 main ones. So here is the small impression, the small singular footprint that they found, and as you can see here, it is just an outline. It's not very clear. It looks like there's some debris that it was stepping on. And here's the phone that they say is 4 inches long. And then this one they say is the large impression and says there was a faintly visible track line at this location. And once again, 4-inch phone. And I believe they're indicating that this entire area is the track here. And this track, according to the follow-up report by Scott Taylor, said that this was about 15 inches long. And this is the gifting bag that they left out there with the 3 apples. You can see that this one only has 1 apple in it left. And it says the one that was removed was found on the trail nearby. And probably down in this area, it looks like they're talking about, is where the other one that was removed from the bag was found. And these are the images of the casting of the apple core. Like he described, he cut the apple core in half and then cast both sides of it. And he's indicating tooth impressions there. And he's indicating a lower tooth there maybe, and top front teeth. Unfortunately, since it is just a photo, it's a little hard to see what he's talking about here. So what are your guys' thoughts on habituation sites? Do you think it's possible that people can reach a point where the Bigfoot is very comfortable, or the Bigfoot family, a group of them, are comfortable being around a particular person or several people and are able to kind of live in a rather harmonious way where they're not really bothering each other? I mean, it looks like in this case they were probably okay with the people, but the dogs were definitely not getting along with these creatures out there. In general, it sounds like that's kind of a common theme, that a lot of reports say that Bigfoots react negatively to dogs. I mean, do you think in general Bigfoots just don't like dogs? I mean, like it shows in this report, she was petting the dog's head when she got hit by the rock, and it looks like obviously the dog was the intended victim, not the witness. And as for the apple core, now do you think that a Bigfoot would leave a tubular apple core like we do, where we, have a little apple, kind of like a corn on the cob thing? Or do you think that generally a Bigfoot would just take an apple and go at it like a horse would? That was one thing I thought was kind of interesting, is that since there was a core, they're eating around the core instead of just straight consuming it. And that would probably be something that would have been learned being around humans, possibly, because we don't eat the core since we like to save the seeds and propagate more trees. Other animals don't care about it. The seeds, granted, do have some, I believe it's arsenic in it, but it's so small that unless you're a tiny little animal, it's probably not going to affect you, or unless you eat a ton of apples, it's not going to affect you. So there really isn't much of a negative side effect for them to just sit there and consume an apple straight away like a horse would. And what are your thoughts on those little mouse mummies? I mean, honestly, I would not expect a human to do that, because you'd have to either find some dead mice or you would have to make the mice dead in order to have them to wrap them up in little bundles of grass and put them out there. So this isn't, like they said here, this is not something a person would likely do, but it is something that requires a little bit of handiwork to do it. So this is something that is a little befuddling and interesting. And if this is a gift from a Bigfoot, why field mice? I mean, I don't think that we've shown any indications as humans that we purposely go out there and seek field mice. So it does make you wonder if either for some reason they got the idea that we like field mice and these should be given to us as a gift, or maybe are field mice a delicacy to them? Maybe it's little snacks, you know, maybe like those little sausages. I don't know. Maybe field mice are like little smokies. I mean, they're snack sized, right? So let us know down in the comments below. You know, have you encountered any rock stacks in odd places that they just don't belong? Have you actually been in a habituation site or a reported habituation site? And yeah, have you ever seen any little tiny mouse mummies? Little smokies, little mouse smokies maybe, wrapped up in leaves, wrapped up in grass or anything like that? I mean, my goodness, that's the interesting part of this story. Well, let us know in the comments below and we'll see you there.